Divorce, it can feel like everything's been stripped away. Your routine, your sense of control, even your identity.
Divorce hit you like a truck. Now you're standing in the wreckage. But this is your moment.
Being able to move out of being a victim is taking responsibility and owning your shit. Because our culture, and our friends, and the gossip mill wants the drama.
No more lies. No more chasing approval. It's time to rebuild.
Figure out what your life looks like. You want to become unrecognizable in a good way.
Body, mind, purpose. Fitness, finances, brotherhood. This is your ride.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together, we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hey everybody, Marc here, host of the Men's Therapy Podcast, and we're doing another solo show. This month we're talking about divorce. So I would say this is probably the number one thing that brings guys into therapy. You know, they usually come because their relationship is moving towards divorce, or they're just post-divorce. It often takes that kind of rock bottom moment for guys to do this work. So my hope is that by doing the show, we're going to help you rebuild your life after divorce, if you're one of those guys, and hopefully encourage some of you that it doesn't have to get this bad before you can get into doing some of the work with us. So let's dive right in. So our first topic is about rebuilding and redefining your manhood after she's gone. So, divorce, it can feel like everything's been stripped away. Your routine, your sense of control, even your identity. But here's a truth that no one tells you. This isn't the end. In fact, for many men, it's a starting line. If you let it, it can be a wake-up call to rebuild not just your life, but who you are as a man. So let's talk about the real comeback, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. For a lot of guys, this ends up being that blank canvas, and it's a call to really figure out who you are. A lot of the guys that I see that go through divorce, it's because they were living a lie. They were living this kind of white picket fence version of reality. They did everything right. They got the good education, they got the good job, they got the girl, they got married, they had 2 kids, but they didn't really figure out who they were. And because of that, they didn't figure out how to find a relationship and to build a family that actually supports them. A lot of men are found playing this kind of father-husband game, but they don't really know what their version of it is. They're based on, their parents first and foremost, maybe things like TV or movies or, some fantasies of what relationships look like. But so much of us, because we don't really talk to each other, unfortunately, they kind of like blend into nothing. You don't have a really good framework for what it means to be in a healthy relationship. So when you're putting on that mask, it very quickly crumbles. So let's talk about the collapse. So after a divorce, what I see unfortunately with a lot of guys is it doesn't stop there. It starts to kind of snowball. You have a guy that loses his partner, and then all of a sudden, he starts drinking too much. And because he's drinking too much, he doesn't show up to work. So he loses his job. And because he can't afford his job, he has to move to a smaller place. He loses his home. And then he has to move further away from his kids, so he loses his relationship with his children. He also loses his identity, right? His identity as a husband and as a provider. For many men, especially in Western culture, that is our primary identity that's been prescribed to us by our culture, is being that provider, being the one that, provides financially, certainly, but also, the one that has the answers, the one that is that emotional rock, the one that is a grounding force for our family. And if we don't have anyone to ground, we don't know who we are anymore. And if we haven't spent the time developing who we are, or we lost that person in our childhood, we can often fall into this void. And it can feel like an empty self. There's something that talked about in this world called empty house, empty self phenomenon, which is without external input, guys often really crumble. And be honest with yourself, do you do that? If your, wife and kids are out of town, do you find yourself kind of letting yourself go? You might call it relaxation, but for many guys, if you're being honest, it's falling into this void. Eating poorly, drinking too much, watching too much TV, staying up late. It might feel like you're playing, you're relaxing because, the wife's away. But for some of us, it's actually the beginning of this collapse. So imagine if your family never came back. You might be stuck in that place forever. And what that is for a lot of guys is it's not that you're a loser, right? It's not that you don't know how to function on your own. I think that's some of these toxic narratives. It's grief. It's grief. It's loss, whether you've lost that role in that family for a weekend or indefinitely with a divorce. there's this massive grief aspect. And as men, we are not encouraged or taught how to grieve. So what does that look like for us that are not initiated, right? It can look like rage, right? It can look like being angry, pissed off at the world, hating other people, having a sense of resentment and kind of just like, just grumpiness that you carry around. It can look like isolation. So pushing people away, whether by, not responding to them or doing what a lot of us do and just saying, oh, everything's fine, right? Keeping people at an arm's length. We can isolate or we can shut down, which is a full and total collapse. That can look like depression. It can look like an addiction. That can look like repetitive behaviors, pleasure-seeking behaviors, right? A complete, total shutdown. But what all that is it's numbing behavior. It's numbing the grief, which is the real feeling that we have to learn how to feel as men, right? The idea that we have truly lost something. I think as men, of course, me included, I love fixing things. I love being the guy with the answers or the guy with the connection or the guy with the perfect resource, the perfect key for the right lock. But that's never going to be 100%. We're never going to be able to do that every single time. And the moments that we can't do that, that's where grief comes in. Whether it's grieving something that we've lost, our family, a loved one, or grieving a future, being like, oh man, my life didn't turn out exactly how I thought it would when I was 18. We don't get a chance to do that. We don't get a chance to really grieve and talk about the things that we've lost. And it doesn't make you a weak person. It makes you human. And in grief, you can connect with other men and other people that have been through it. And it helps you show, how you might want to do things differently in the future, right? We're all going to make mistakes. We all fuck things up. And when you do, you can be like, okay, what did I learn? How can I tactically move forward with this? So once you've, gone through the collapse, hopefully it doesn't get so bad. Once you've felt some of that grief, it's time to start rebuilding. And the first step is ownership, not blame. And again, way easier said than done, because our culture and our friends and the gossip mill wants the drama. They want the other person to be evil. They want you to have that evil ex that comes in and ruins your life and poisons your kids and creates this horrible adversarial relationship. Whereas if we're being honest, there's way more to the story, and it's a nuanced thing. It takes two to tango. So there's probably things that you did, and there's things that she did, certainly. And the idea here towards being able to move out of being a victim is taking responsibility and owning your shit. Some common ones, right? Just to throw them out there. One is often not validating our partners, right? Not taking them seriously, whether that's from a place of fear. We don't want to fear their emotions, or maybe some internalized misogyny. This idea that we don't think that what they're bringing is legit, right? Their issues don't really matter. They're being dramatic. They're being emotional. They're being hysterical, right? And validating is a one-way ticket to divorce. Another thing is some men, we act out, right? Sure, we act out from a place from pain, but we act out, whether that's an affair or, a domestic violence incident, a big anger explosion or a addiction, right? Like drinking too much. We act out because we often struggle to name our own needs. And if we can do that, if we can start to name what we need, we don't need to go to those places of complete meltdown, right? Another thing that we need to own is if our priorities weren't right, if we were prioritizing our work and our income over our family.
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
Again, very, very common, but it's worth just saying like, hey, if you're going to autopsy your relationship, what really went wrong? Not to beat yourself over the stick, right? Not to fall into shame, but to figure out how you don't find yourself in that same position 10 years later when you decide to date again. So once you've come to ownership, you've accepted some hard truths, you're starting to work on it, whether it be through, self-improvement, therapy, this podcast, taking online courses, whatever it is, talking to friends. Then it's time to create structure. You got to start from the bottom of the pyramid. And that looks like kind of a few basic things for men. The first thing is sleep, right? Just start sleeping. Get rid of things that are getting in the way of your sleeping. For many men, that's alcohol and marijuana, right? So cut out those things that are impacting your sleep. Then start to get your health and fitness back. Start eating better, get to the gym, do activities you enjoy, get back on that bike, get out for a run, go back fishing, start to bring it up. And in the beginning, it's going to suck. You're going to probably realize that you're not as in good shape as you want to be, and certainly not where you were in your prime. You might, feel lonely because you don't have people to do those activities with. For the first, I don't know, call it 3 to 6 months, it's going to be fake it till you make it. I cannot and will not sugarcoat that for you. It's going to suck. And again, having some accountability partners are very helpful. But the idea is get that flywheel going, start to build back those healthy habits so you can start to move forward. And then the last thing, which is critical for many men, is finances. Figure out what your life looks like. Figure out, if you're paying alimony or child support, how that fits into your budget. Maybe you do have to downsize. Maybe you have to get the kind of stereotypical, divorced dad apartment. It's shitty, but it's better than hemorrhaging money. So fitness, finance, and sleep are critical because one, they're going to make you, just regulate your nervous system, right? Make you a more stable, balanced person and help, initiate that neuroplasticity that we know starts to heal your brain. And it's going to get you to a place that if you do want to date again, you're going to be way more desirable. You're not going to attract somebody or attract experiences that are on kind of the same toxic wavelength that you may be on and the same kind of depressed place that you might be on. The deeper work, and we do this a ton at Men's Therapy Online, is redefining your masculinity independent from those codependent ideas. And what do I mean by that? So when I say codependent identities, I mean things like just identifying as a provider, a husband, and a dad. Having your entire self-worth be dependent on external validation. As men, we're trained, and as Americans, I think even more so, because women have their own version of this, we are trained to disvalue our own sense of self and, in fact, often neglect it for the external approval of others. And for many of us, a fear of being gossiped and talked bad about. So the idea here is to start to figure out what it means to be a man from your perspective. A therapist can, of course, help you with this, but some ideas that we often talk about is like coming up with your set of values. The ones that we have at MTO are strength, courage, mastery, and honor. But figuring out what a good man means to you and building towards that. You want to be the guy that you can look yourself in the mirror and say, yes, sure, I'm imperfect. Sure, I've made some mistakes, but I am proud of the man I want to be. You want to learn how to be your own best friend. Figure out what you like to do by yourself, with yourself, and do those things. Figure out how to be alone. Figure out how to have a good day without any external input. You're not going to live that way because that's super freaking lonely, right? But if you can do that a handful of times, you're going to start to really break some of these patterns of needing other people. And let me tell you this way, right? If you don't need other people, it opens up the ability to want other people and to be wanted by other people. So if you can break that need, you can open yourself to want and desire. So once you've done that, I really encourage that men start to build brotherhood and community of men, right? Don't date right away. Build male friendships, whether that's through something like a men's group, a divorced dad group, we run those at MTO, or by joining clubs and organizations, finding a hobby that you like, getting involved at your gym, getting involved at your kid's school, joining a church or a spiritual community. Like start to build male friendships and good male friendships. I forget who says it, but there's an often quoted thing that says, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So finding other guys that have some version of mentorship, something about them that they respect, whether it's their family life, their physical fitness, their business success, their spiritual or wisdom capabilities, find these guys and spend time with them because they're going to rub off on you. So if you can find people that are moving you forward, that are promotion focused, right, that are focused on helping you become the best version of yourself versus prevention focused, which is those people that are, haters, right? People that are telling you why you can't do something, right? Find that promotion focused group of guys that are going to be there through thick and thin. Because as you start to add complexity back into your life, whether that's dating or your kids getting older or you improving your job, right, or moving to a new place, having a consistent group is absolutely critical. And that's that idea of true brotherhood, right? Brotherhood and mentorship and peer support. Then, and this is the second to last thing, right? And I say this intentionally, then date, right? Don't date until you've done these other things. Because if you do, you're going to find out you're dating the same person again. If you don't go back and heal your trauma, if you don't figure out who you are independent of other people's external validation, if you don't get yourself right with your fitness, your health, your sleep, your finances, if you don't clean your own room, you're going to find someone else messy. And I've seen it too many times. It's really critical. It's really, really critical to rebuild yourself before you start to share yourself. And how do you know when you're ready? Well, you know when you're ready when you're able to spend time alone. You know when you're ready when you're able to actually be attracted to other people from a place of true desire, not from neediness. You know when you're ready when you're able to have confidence going alone to things, right? Being around women and not needing to be talking to them all the time, but having a good group of guy friends or being there solo. That's when you're ready to date again. And you're going to fuck it up. That's the hard truth, right? It's like all these relational things, you can strategize in therapy, you can talk to your dudes, you can read all the books, but you're gonna fuck it up because relational things have to be worked out relationally. So another good piece of advice is do not marry the first person you date, because unfortunately for them, for you, for everyone, that's gonna kind of be a rebound. It's going to be a training ground. It's going to be an opportunity for you to try new things. And when you are dating, ask yourself, yes, of course, do I like this person? That's critical. But more importantly, do I like myself when I'm with this person? Is this person bringing out the man that I want to be? Is this person encouraging me to be the best version of myself? Is this person okay with my messiness, with my clumsiness, with my imperfections? And am I okay with theirs? Are we going to build something that is fundamentally different than the marriage that I had before? Because it's not about getting a redo. Right? You're not going to try to do the same thing, but better. You're trying to do a completely different thing. And that's kind of where we end this thing is at the end, you want to become unrecognizable in a good way, right? Not unrecognizable because your life is a disaster, but unrecognizable because you have truly fundamentally changed who you are for the better. That is what it truly takes. That's what it truly takes to get in a better relationship. That is truly what it takes to be the best role model for your children. That is truly what it takes to be successful in the world, is you need to have a paradigm shift on who you are and how you view the world. Seems like a tall order, and it is. But we will help you do it one step at a time of restructuring, healing, and becoming the man who you want to be and the man that you were meant to be. Again, that guy you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am proud to be a man today. That's the hope. So that's a very quick blueprint for rebuilding after divorce. I actually just published a really long blog about it on the website. You can go ahead and take a look at that. That's at menstherapy.online/blogs. You can look at it there. I'll also probably be on the homepage if you're listening to this close to when it released. And there's a lot more practical advice and tips there. We also have divorce dad support groups as well as general men's groups that can help you become that man. And we have therapists, right? So talk to a therapist if you really want to take this seriously. I hope that this helps, and I'll see you next week, another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.